Welcome back, nerds and nerdettes. Today, we're going to go over our honest review on Smite 2. Since we just wrapped up the alpha weekend, got a little over 20 hours of playtime, and I'm going to tell you what I think, some things I recommend, and hopefully get some of your feedback to make this game the game we want to play. Let's snap into it. I'm going to have some gameplay in the background while I talk about a few things that I really think could help this game. There are some glitches and stuff like that. We'll talk about some issues and concerns. The big thing for me, just playing it from Smite 1 to Smite 2. Now, I am a League player. I played League for ages. I played Smite for a while. I started Smite a few years back. The one thing I really like about Smite 2 is it had a lot of the same essence as Smite 1 as far as general feel of the game, but playing the game felt a lot more like League, where you have the bushes on the side, which I know some people aren't used to, but I do like the ability to be able to outplay people as far as setting up ganks, more map rotation, being that the map felt a little more tight-knit. Some of the issues I had with the map, the field of view needs to be adjusted. I felt like I was way too close to my character. Playing Fenrir and things like that, when you jump and you do things, you feel like you're really, really close to the camera. It needs to be brought back a little bit. I would say similar to Smite 1 if you're looking for that more realistic feel, pushed in a little bit. But I just felt too close to my character that it was harder for me to see actions and movements. There's a couple times where I swing and I feel like I'm on them and I turn and like the screen felt really tight, like almost everything was really cluttered. I think it needs to be drawn back a little bit to give you a bigger field of view, personally. Also, with the combat, I felt the projectiles, another thing, was just really slow. I feel like the on her spears, the arrows, like Neat's ultimate. I don't know if it was a bug or not, but there's a couple times I shot it and it almost felt like it was disabled, like it just disappeared and you wouldn't see it, but you knew it did the damage, or it looked like it got there super late. There was a couple glitches on that side I noticed with Neath. And while we're talking about glitches, Fenrir, his ult was bugged. There'd be a lot of times where I felt like I was picking somebody up and I started to run away and they weren't in my mouth. So I don't know if it was an alt issue or if I had them and they bees out of it or something. I didn't see the beads get procced. It looked like they just didn't even have in my mouth in the first place. So I don't know if that was just a bug, but Fenrir's ult felt a little off. Loki's stealth, I think, was bugged because there's a lot of times I was using it or playing against it where I felt like the stun just didn't happen, or the stealth, I should say, didn't happen. So a few of those things. Ymir's wall was bugged. There was a couple opportunities that, one, I got stuck. I couldn't move forward or back. I was kind of like pinned. I'll probably even put a clip of that happening. I had no time. I was playing with my buddy and he threw up a wall, and I think it was an Odin was stuck between a wall and the rock. He couldn't move forward or back. He was just glitched in. So those are a couple bugs that proximity wise they should be able to fix, but I want to bring it out there so they do see it. The VGS is another thing. When you use your VGS, if you were to use any of your walk buttons, it's almost like it would either break your walk or it wouldn't do the VGS. So the VGSs were a little broken. Once again, this is all in alpha. These are just things I want to bring up that I felt needed to be addressed while they had the opportunity. I didn't expect this game to run super smooth, but it ran phenomenal for what it was. I know some people had some FPS issues. I ran mine anywhere between like 95 to 120 for the majority of it, and I have all my settings maxed out. So there might be something there that could be system related for some people. Recalling bushes was another thing. If you're in a bush and recalling and you're hidden, I think the sound should go away as well. I feel like having that tall tale sound audio, which is very loud, you're going to be able to know that they're recalling, so you can just attack the bush knowing they're in a recall format. If you're in the bush and you're recalling, if you're doing the stealth thing, it should be fully stealth. So I think that's something they could look at as well if they're looking to keep the bushes in play and the way it's set up. So as we were talking about like projectiles, I just felt like earlier when you watch some of the gameplay, it felt like you could see every projectile coming at you. Anubis's wrap would just come and you could just kind of step to the side. Like, I feel like they need to be sped up because it didn't feel impactful as good as the game felt. And as like Onhor's ultimate it just felt so good to hit that ultimate, especially that last spear. You could just feel the oomph in the throw. The animations were good, but they need to be sped up. it's too easy to see everything coming at you. There was no way you were going to be able to hit everything because people could just see everything and react. As far as abilities, especially like Kukulkan, you could see the tornadoes on the ground. Couldn't necessarily tell where the line ended. On Smite 1, there was a very clear distinction on where the pathing was, where the arrows stopped, where the jumps landed. This had a lot less of that display to give you a good understanding of where you're hitting, what you're not hitting, if you're stepping into it, if you're not stepping into it. When you throw the grasping hands on the ground, you can't tell if you're stepping in it, if you're outside of it, because you're like, could be right in the cusp of it. So a little bit more line definition, I think, helps a lot of people figure out if they're hitting or missing their abilities, because it is hard to tell once it's out if they're in that field. The map, a couple things I would fix on the map. Lanes from the jungle, you could see from one end to the other. There's no obstruction. There's no wall or barrier. You can clearly see from one lane to another. So I feel like they need to have more pieces moved, more walls adjusted for line of sight. It's just very easy to see across the jungle. So having one ward and putting that ward in a bush or on the opposite side of a wall was all you really needed, because you could see straight across the jungle if someone was coming if you just glanced over. So it made it a little bit more predictable. You couldn't really sneak up and get as many ganks unless you were playing someone like Fenrir, who was phenomenal for jumping walls. I have a couple gameplays of that. Those are the only ways you were really getting through, because everybody could really see you coming from a ways away. Speaking of lanes, I think mid lane needs to be expanded a little bit further apart. It was very easy to stay in lane, get camps, and get back to lane. They need to separate the towers in the lane a little bit further apart to make it so you can't get as much farming from mid lane. I feel like mid lane could just feast on everything around because it was so easy to get back and forth between camp to gold to lane to camp back. So they need to spread it out a little bit more, maybe lengthen it just to give it some more depth, so middle lane isn't so compact. I mean, you feel like it was really, really tight, and it was really easy to get away from ganks. You were close to your tower. You're never really caught off. Speaking of towers, tier 1 towers, the towers felt spongy. They hit like trucks, which was good, but they felt like they were very soft. You could hit them and you would break them really quick, and there's a lot of gold you got off those tier 1 towers. The tier 1 towers, they should really reduce the amount of gold you get. It's 125 per gold drop on tier 1, which is really high. So if you knock down both and you're there, you get 250 gold. That probably needs to be toned down. I think even if you just started at 75 gold, you're still getting 150 for taking down the one tier of a tower. Then another tier of the tower drops, you get another 150, and then you also get the third drop if you get the first tower silver. So there's a couple things that could adjust on that, or make the towers have more HP pool so it's harder to get. I just felt like once you go like past the 1, you could literally just take down 2 and 3 really quick. So if you had a pile of minions and one person there, towers felt very smushy. Maybe boost up the HP, drop down the gold to make it feel a little bit more advantageous to take down, but not as overpowered as far as the amount you get from it. One thing I do love about the map being a little bit more compact with the portals and things like that to transfer side to side, the teleporters, there was a lot more PvP. There was a lot more fighting over objectives. One of the big things I loved about League, which Smite 2 really felt good with, you saw fights over objectives. You saw fights over Gold Fear. You saw fights over just sometimes getting that war horn, getting fights over Fire Giant, fighting for those towers. There was a lot more PvP interaction. Smite 1, like you would get PvP, but I mean, there'd be times you'd be farming in a lane for 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and you wouldn't see anybody besides the person you were against, especially in a solo lane. So that interaction, that faster pace really felt good. It felt beneficial. There was value to it. So I really like that aspect of it, that there was a lot more engagement, more interaction. The hybrid builds, though, tanks were doing way too much damage for a tank. If they were building tanky, I mean, they were still clearing camps. They're still, knocking people down in 3-4 shots. Like, unless you're building a tank that is damage only, there was too much variation with the tank structure as far as solo laners. Solo laners were very strong, even building full tank builds. There was a lot of times Bologna, especially Chalk. You could build them in a tank outfit and you would still wreck people in a couple hits. So they were just very, very strong. And they need to figure out how to tone that down. So if you are building more of a tank style, your damage isn't as high to kind of balance that out. I think that's the one thing I would say there. I love the new item system. The items, picking between items, not having to specify what you're going to build before the game starts to know what kind of path you have to go down early. I love it. That's another thing they got from League that I really enjoy. You can buy an axe and that axe can go to many different items. It's not like, okay, I build a mace, I have to go down the mace tree. I build a bow, I have to go down the bow tree. These building items allow you to branch out and to modify your builds as you go. If I buy a gem or if I buy a medallion, I can kind of combine those and go a different route if I need to. The thing with Smite 1 was if you bought an item and it wasn't the best item to build early because maybe you got behind or they're building different, it's hard to just modify your build in game to match your competition. So this gives a lot more counter builds, a lot more ability for the person to build appropriately based on what they need on the gameplay. So I love the creativity. I love the freedom to build. I love the ease of building. Now, I would change a few things in the items. I know they do it to the way left. So if you're in the item screen, you're not getting ganked while window shopping. And I get that, but I really would love to see that dead center item. Bigger screen with all the side item options on the left. It did make it a little clunky trying to get through items tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 to figure out what goes to what. A lot of time I just go right to tier 3, click the item I think I want to go with, and then see where to go from there or type it in. So I love the design, the concept. I think the UI needs to be adjusted as far as centered, bigger, and a little bit cleaner to matriculate the tree more efficiently, but I wouldn't change the system. I really like the way the system is, and I love the fact that you can be very creative with it. I do like the fact that they give you a ward for free, and you get to keep that all game, and it updates eventually to a sentry. What I don't like is everybody gets beads. You should be able maybe to choose from multiple. You should be able to get Aegis, Blink. I know Blink's an item in the game, and it's really cool how you can blink with an alt, or beads. Maybe they give you one of those three options for free, and you choose it because certain gods work better with certain things. Ganking early and having everybody have beads is very frustrating because everybody gets a free, I made a mistake, I'm out. And I don't like that free life. If someone wants to get beads over Aegis, over Blink, that's a choice they should be able to pick in the beginning of the game. They get one free one along with a ward. I'm okay with that. But everybody having beads, I think, is a little much because it takes a lot of that early game mistake and it saves them. It gives them a free life, and that doesn't feel rewarding. So I think that should be an option there. With the item screen, I think as well, they're going to have to adjust some of these items. Bloodforge was unbelievably strong. By far one of the best items built in the game. I mean, it was top tier. And especially if you were a jungle, you went Bloodforge and Jotun, you were pretty much unstoppable early game because Bloodforge was one of the items that was broken. Now, there are a few items in there that could be tweaked, and I don't know how they're going to do it based off the new system with strength and intel, but I think it was still a phenomenal first weekend. I love the item screen. I love the colors. I love the map, the design. Few things I would tweak: some of the sounds, especially hitting towers. I would tone that down a little bit. Footsteps were very loud. You could hear footsteps really far away. So some of the audio can be adjusted up and down to make it a little bit more welcoming. Some of the things were just so loud you couldn't hear anything. The ward pings, I liked having just a lighted area wherever you put the ward so it lit up around it. I think that was a little bit more effective so I could just glance at my map. I would like to be able to expand the size of the map to see it a little bit better in game. I know you couldn't adjust it. Once again, it's an early alpha. I feel like they could give you some of those options coming up, but outside of that, the game felt really good. It felt fun to play Smite 2. I know a lot of people were just trying new builds, trying new things. The builds were phenomenal. Neath felt really good to play. Zeus's new kit was really fun. Fenrir was unbelievable. Chalk's new design with items was really strong, but the game itself is in an amazing spot. And I know you're going to have the haters out there that just want to hate on the game, I'm telling you, I wish I had another 20 hours to play because the game just felt welcoming. The queues were fast. There was few issues considering the alpha launch first weekend, 11 or 14 gods. The servers held up well. So the whole game experience was very well. There are, like I said, those small things I would tweak. I would get line shot abilities. I saw a lot of the times where I was using Anubis's ult, or if I was using Neath, or I was using any of these straight lines, the line itself, the arrow where like the target was being shot would disappear or go invisible. So these are just coding issues they could go in and fix, but they need to know to fix it. So I'm excited. June, the next gameplay, they're going to have more gods out. Hopefully some of these things will be fixed and adjusted. I'll come at you with another review and we'll kind of go over some information based off that. If you have any questions, concerns, or you feel differently, feel free to leave those comments in the bottom. If you're still here, feel free to like and subscribe the video. I'll catch you guys in the next one.